kind of give a more visual line. It can also kind of use the foot here and create a line right there, so it draws the eye up through the character a little bit. And I'm gonna rotate the head just a little bit too. Okay. So something like that. That's pose 1. Make sure everything's keyed. And then pose 2 is basically going to be the opposite. And if I remember correctly, this is going to, the way I wanted to do this, I had written down some notes. I think it was 8 frames per step, 16 frames total. So on frame 17, that's going to be the end of our cycle. So the same pose here. And then frame 8 frames, frame 9. Yeah, frame 9 is going to be the midpoint. So at this point, I just need to move my character forward. And the exact distance, because it's a run, we don't have to worry too much about specific distances. Essentially because both feet are going to be off the ground and the character can travel forward without touching the ground for a while. So what I really want to do is just do what looks right or what feels right. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this. Let's actually get rid of that here for now. And I'm just going to animate the root control here. So from frame 1 to frame 17, set a key. And in the graph editor, let's zoom out here. Let's move this character forward. So I'm going to take my translate Z, and I'm just going to set this to linear right there. And let's see how far we want the character to get in 2 steps. Let's just move them forward. Would this feel right? So if I watch this character here, does that feel right? And essentially you just hit play. And let's make sure we're only looking at the range we want. And I'm going to turn on cached playback. Let's see if this is going to work. So, does that feel right? It's kind of slow. So, let's increase that. Now, it doesn't look like it's actually playing at full speed here. Let me see. Yeah, even here, it's not playing at full speed. Let me double check my settings. Something might have changed. This is always important. Double check your time slider. Yeah, right there. Let's set this to play 24 frames per second. Yeah, that's better. Ideally, you should play blast for this instead of just hitting play. I think that's pretty good. So as he's running, I want this to have a good sense of speed. I don't want him to be super slow. And what was that blue bar? That's the cached playback. So if you turn that on, it'll save your animation into the cache and make the playback speed in Maya a little faster. This started in Maya 2020, I believe, and it's in Maya 2022 as well. Okay. Is it okay to animate the root motion control? It depends. If how do I want to put this? The only time you want to animate the root motion control is you don't normally want to animate the root motion control because it's either used as a global repositioning tool. I'm just using it here as kind of a guide to kind of estimate how far my character should move. But it's either as a global positioning tool or a video game engine will use it to position your character. So in the end, your animation should not have motion on this root control, but you can use it to either start building in some motion or to get an idea of a motion. So if you're doing previs animation, you can move that. But the final animation shouldn't really have that animated for most scenes. For my walk animation, I move the hip and the foot IKs. That's what I usually do as well. So now that I've kind of got the idea of how fast he should be going here, what I'm going to do is take the hip here and move that forward. Forward. And yeah, I'm going to have some trouble here. I think the character is going up. Yeah. Okay. So the issue that's happening here is when I move the cog control, which is the main body control, it's starting to tilt him upwards ever so slightly. It's not zeroed out properly. The pivot point isn't slightly rotated. Pivot slightly rotated. Write that down. Essentially what that means is I can't use this as a way to animate my character straight, and I just noticed my camera is frozen. Boop. There we go. Hey. So I'm gonna have to think of a different way of moving him forward. If I can't use that, do they have... Let's see. Well, if I can't move it forward, what I could do is just do a treadmill run. I don't usually like to do treadmill runs. Just me personally, I like to have a forward momentum to the character and then turn it into a treadmill run. But since I can't move him forward without running into a whole nightmare of issues, let me just double check something. Yeah, you can see how it's adjusting both those values at once. So let's do a treadmill run. So essentially I've got pose 1, pose 2, pose 3 here is going to be the opposite. So let's get... Oh, and for some reason things aren't all keyed here. Boop, key. Please show how to use cache playback. It's really just, it's turning this option on right here. Boop, right there. Turn that on and that's it. If you're going into the settings and preferences, you can find it under cache playback right there and turn it on right there. And then set the amount of RAM you want to use and all of that stuff. So ideally you should just be hitting that one button. The issue that I was having is that the pivot point of the cog isn't quite oriented to the world. So I've written this down in the notes that I'm going to pass along as well. But if I move the character forward, see how it's affecting both the translate Y and the translate Z instead of just one? So if I was trying to move the character forward, in this case animating the character for a run, moving forward, you notice how they're actually going slightly down here, or if I go forward, they go up slightly. So you can't really animate them moving in one direction easily with the main cog control. It would have to be either, maybe if I can use a pivot. No, the pivot's not going to do anything. Cool. The solid grayed out for some reason in both the bottom corner and the preferences. Time to Google. If it's grayed out, it's because you are animating with DG turned on here. So your evaluation mode for cache playback to work, it needs to be in parallel mode. So this is where it can get tricky because certain rigs, a lot of rigs actually, anything that was made in older versions of Maya, sometimes they need DG to work. Aren't we supposed to use DG most of the time? No, you should really only use DG if the rig isn't working in parallel. So if the rig works in parallel, set it to parallel. If you're seeing issues, then you have to switch back to DG. And I've seen this with all sorts of rigs. So it is just one of those things where, depending on how the rig was made, it might not have been optimized for that parallel process because it didn't exist at the time. So something to be careful of. What's the difference? Basically, DG and parallel is just how Maya uses your processors. The problem with Maya, in the old versions of Maya, is you could have an 8-core processor on your computer and it wouldn't matter. Maya would only use one. It was not able to use multiple processors at once. So they switched from the old DG method to the parallel method, which now allows Maya to use all the processors properly, which is great. The problem is that I'm not sure it's the way they coded it, what's happening on the back end, if it's on the rigs. Because of that new evaluation mode, basically how Maya is processing the information, certain rigs don't process correctly, where you'll try to move a control and the geometry doesn't move with it, or you'll scrub through and things will change when they shouldn't. Essentially, it's just not processing the information correctly and coming up with errors. So if you're having that, you need to go back to the old DG method, which kind of sucks because it's slower, but at least the rig works. And then, like A to the J mentioned as well, stepped preview is another feature that doesn't always work. So stepped preview is, let's say you have some animation here, and I'm just going to move this foot back right there. And you can see it's moving in splines. Let's turn off cache playback here. So it's slipping backwards. Stepped preview, if you right click in your timeline, you can turn on enable stepped preview, is essentially going to make it so that it only changes when you get to those keys, as if it's in step mode, which is really cool because you can have all of your keys and everything set and all splined out, and then always go back into stepped mode to get an idea of how your shot looks. The problem with that is that a lot of rigs actually have built-in animation to them, which essentially means that, oops, I'm on the wrong frame. Essentially means that if you're turning on stepped preview, it's going to break the animation that's part of the rig, and it's going to distort the rig. So you have to be very careful of that. Now he looks like he's power walking. I should just do a walk like this. There you go. Who needs to run? So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to match the feet up close enough as they're coming up here. They don't have to match exactly, but closer will make it so that he doesn't feel like he has a limp in his walk. So something along those lines. Now the back foot here, this doesn't really matter. I don't have to match this in any specific way, as long as I get that line of action in place. Atom Tool or Atom Bot does have a tool to mirror limbs. I don't have it installed in Maya 2022 right now, but also I kind of want to show just how I would do this without the tool. The other thing is, if you're going to use the mirror tool in Animbot, you have to set it up before you pose out the rig. So if you've already posed out the rig like I have, it's not going to be able to mirror quite correctly. While the rig is still in its T-pose, you'll select the controls and then hit the, I forget what button it is. It basically looks at the rig and finds out where it can mirror it, and then you can very easily mirror poses and your whole animation, which is really nice and speeds up your workflow quite a bit. If you have Animbot, I highly recommend doing that. In my case, I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. Okay. So we've got that. Let's get that spine in place. And mirror the arms. So once again, this is where if I had Animbot, I could just hit that mirror button, which would be nice. But even if I had the mirror button, I would try to change things up a little bit. You don't want to just do a straight mirror. The reason for that is it's going to make your run look mechanical. It's going to make the character feel like it's just a little too perfect. So it's good to add in those little imperfections. Maybe one stride is just a little bit longer than the other. Or one arm, as it goes forward, kind of stays a little bit more bent compared to when it went, or when it goes forward compared to when it went back. At the end of the production, someone told me, dude, you never worked in parallel? You know, parallel allows you to have real-time playback? Yeah. That's always the worst, when you work on something and it's like, I'm trying to be smart. I don't want to like break the rigs or anything. I'll work in DG. And then you find out that no, you could have done the whole thing in parallel. That hurts. Let's see. Let's bend this arm a little bit more here. Play with the perspective, the depth. This is always something I try to look for. I try to avoid shots where the character feels like they're on a 2D plane and their limbs are moving in 2D. Even if this character is essentially going to be moving in a very 2D way, kind of this orthographic video game style, I can play with the arms so that the arms go in and out of camera and just kind of feel a little bit more dynamic. Now here, just trying to see what angle the arm should be, because I think on this one I kind of pulled it in too much. Now that I think about it, essentially he would be flopping his arms in a weird way if I did that. Always good to double check. Okay. Then with the head, add a little bit of that sympathetic action in there. See how this feels. So essentially we've just got the flip right there. And I think that's pretty good for now. Something feels wrong with the foot rotations though. Here, I think, oops, not that foot, this foot. Can be rotated a little bit more so we don't see quite as much of the bottom of the shoe. That way we get a little bit of visual difference between the two legs. Okay. I kind of want a better silhouette on that back arm here. I feel like it's... yeah, it should be further out there. Let's see. Does the playback only work for the viewport you have selected, or is there a way to get all the viewports to play at the same time? So right now you can see all my viewports play at the same time. That's a very weird looking run. To get that to work, you can just go to time slider here, and then right here, update view. You can set it to active or all. All will slow things down quite a bit compared to just one viewport playing at once, but you can do that. So if I set this to active right now and scrub through, you'll notice it's only the one viewport that's playing, and then the other one will update once I let go. Or if I hit play, it'll only do the one right there. If I set this to all, which is the way I normally like to animate because it makes it easier to kind of diagnose issues, and I can kind of look at how the run's feeling from the front and the side all at once. That's what I like. But I have had some scenes where the rig is just so slow that I will just set it to update one view. Would animating the foot in the air in FK be a crazy idea in most cases? No, not at all. I guess I should better use IK all the time if there's no IK-FK blend. Volley did not have it, and matching the switch was kind of annoying. So if you don't have an FK-IK, well, actually, there's two questions in there. So is it a bad idea? Not at all. Especially if you have a character that the feet are up in the air for a long period of time, you can definitely switch. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally probably wouldn't, just because I'm used to animating legs in IK, but there's nothing wrong with that. If a character is doing a flip or like doing some more complex action, I will sometimes use FK because it makes it much easier. But with that said, if you do have to do that switch, the key is to switch at a moment where the foot is moving quickly. So you don't want to switch the moment before the foot touches the ground, because that's going to be very tricky to make any adjustments, and you make one tiny move and then you have to go back in the IK and readjust it. It's a pain. Instead, you want to do it maybe a few frames before the actual contact when the foot is moving quickly, and then you can very easily hide the transition. The faster something moves when you do an IK and FK switch, the easier it is to hide. The more subtly it moves, the harder it is to hide. Like if you have a character that's moving their hands really slowly to touch on a wall, and then you have to do a FK-IK switch there, that's going to be a nightmare. You're going to notice any little adjustment. But if they move their hand up and then touch slowly, do the FK-IK switch here. If there's a pop between this pose to this pose, no one's going to notice because it's a big change. So that's my kind of rule of thumb. Whenever I'm doing an FK-IK switch, is I look for the moment where the object is traveling its fastest. It just makes it a lot easier. Okay. Now, let's keep keying this here. So I'm going to take this, set a key. And this is where breakdowns are going to be so helpful, because right now that foot is just sliding horribly backwards. And essentially this foot right now should be flat on the ground. Let's actually just copy the pose from here. Copy it over. That way I have all my rotations and everything in place. And then just boop. And move it straight back. And what I want here is just a little bit of a lean, I think. And I forgot one of the rotations. Boop. Not rotate Y, rotate Z. Actually, should have used rotate Z here. It's fine. I'll be able to hide that. The Living Animation Encyclopedia. This is all stuff I've learned from many other people, so I'm just passing on the knowledge that I was taught. And also the stuff that I also failed at, because I did a shot like that where I did an FK-IK switch. I forget what it was the character was doing. Oh, I think I remember. They were running their hand along the hood of a car. So they were running their hand off, and then they kind of did that, and I think they did something like this. So like that. And I did the FK-IK switch right as the hand was lifting off. And Yeah, it was a nightmare. It really was. Let's see, when I practiced my walk cycle, I got problems mirroring the animation because my displacement in the foot got messed up. Displacement. I'm not sure what you mean by displacement. Do you mean like a displacement map, or more of just the positioning of it got moved? The position. If the position of the foot got moved slightly, what you can do is just go in your graph editor and double check that your curves are flat. So for example, here, I would make sure that my translate Y is totally flat here. And in this case, you're going to see like this should be flat right there. There shouldn't be a slide in here. It will be. Essentially on this key, when the foot flattens out, from here to here, it'll be flat. It's off a little bit because I rotated the foot slightly so that the foot lands on an angle and then flattens out instead of landing flat and then flat again. So the big thing is just looking in your graph editor, making sure the curves are flat when they should be. Okay. So contact down. So this is going to be the down position here. So let's move those hips down. I can probably raise this up a little bit too. I don't want to go too far. I don't want that leg to feel stretchy. But we should see that a little bit of a change there. We should feel something. I can maybe actually bend the leg a little bit. That way we get a little bit of a push between that and that. Okay. Now this is where I could start animating in more of a layered fashion. So I could just focus on the hips and the feet first, get those working, and then go back to the chest if I wanted to. Or I could go in and do a post-pose method. So that essentially means coming in through here and, okay, going through the chest, making sure these are working exactly the way they should be. And I think I selected something I shouldn't. So the chest controls there. They're going to start rotating forward here. We get that twist in the body. I'm going to build in the rotate X afterwards. Okay, the legs coming through here. Oh, and am I using reference? I'm using not quite reference. I'm taking inspiration from the old cartoon. So essentially I looked at a few of the poses from the old cartoon at the way Ash used to run. And I'm kind of using that as a base. And then from there, I'm going to start exaggerating it and making my own run, because it's not going to work quite the same because we've got this top-down view. The character is so small. I'm just using that original run because essentially my thought process when I was thinking of this animation was, what if you took the original Pokemon game, the top-down like Pokemon Red and Blue, but had a 3D model moving through it, kind of like the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. And because of that, I kind of wanted to use aspects of the original cartoon as well. The way that was animated and the way the characters moved in that as kind of a inspiration for the motion style. I didn't want to make it just kind of, what's the right word I'm looking for? Too modern or just like a typical game. I wanted to have a little bit of that anime run. So like the high knees right there, like that very energetic run. If I remember, you look at the original series, like Ash runs like this though. His nose is in front of his toes. So I don't know if I want to go that far. Actually, maybe I do. We'll see. Maybe a little bit more. As I pushed it forward, it kind of looked cool. We'll see. So yeah, short answer, I am taking inspiration from the old cartoon, but I don't want to copy it. If I start copying it and just kind of let's duplicate it, that's plagiarism, so that's not my own animation at that point. I could count it as a master study, but I wouldn't ever post it if I did that. So it's really just kind of what's the goal of this? And in my case, it's taking the original and then using it as inspiration for something new. I love the old Pokemon cartoon. Yeah, it's a good cartoon. And I've never seen, or I haven't seen any of the new animations, but I've heard and seen clips of the I think it's the Alola season when they're in the Alola region, and wow, is it well animated. Like those animators on there are god tier. So good. Let's roll this foot up a little bit. I think I can break the toes a little bit more. Okay, get a nice push off here. Now, as he comes up, so this is going to be technically the passing and down pose are together. And then this is the character starting to push up, which I just realized and remembered that I'm going to have to bring that foot back a little bit and push him up. I want this nice down, up motion. And let's actually bend the spine down just a little bit more. I'm going to refine all the overlap as we go. Okay, doot. Now here, if you look at the old anime, I was studying the spacing of the old anime. And something that they do very interestingly is normally what you would do is you would have the spacing. Let me draw this out. You'd have the spacing of the leg. So the leg kind of starts out back here. And then it's going forward. Right here. Let's keep this nice and simple. So you've got that. And the spacing here would be to ease out and then ease in. So you hold the extremes and you go very fast in the middle. That would be the typical way to do it. If you look at the old anime, the way the run happens is that it holds a little bit at the beginning, but then holds in the middle before coming in through there. So you've got 2 frames, and this is animated on 2s. So you have 2 poses where the knee is bent here and then still bent before straightening. I want to try that out. It creates this, you see how that you feel that hold right in there? It's an interesting little spacing, I wouldn't say trick, but like technique that they're using here. I want to see how that feels. I might tweak it because it might end up kind of feeling a little weird when you put it on ones. It might look like the foot kind of gets locked in place. But I do want to try it. Now, one thing I have to be very careful of here is that the foot here, as it's traveling on the ground, should be moving linearly. If I want this to be a constant speed, this foot from the moment it touches the ground to when it lifts off here should not slow down. This should be one linear motion. So that's telling me a couple of things. I think I'm gonna have to push this back a little bit, and then let's pull this forward a little bit. And can I pull this back a little bit? Something like that. I'm going to get it perfectly linear in just a second. But I need to make sure this motion is linear. If it's not, what's going to end up happening is that the character is going to look like they are... What's the right word I'm looking for? Like when you make them actually walk, they're going to be speeding up and slowing down in weird ways. I could always just stretch that leg out a little bit. Let's see. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. I'm going to focus more on the... Oops, don't want to copy that over. I'm going to focus more on the posing, and then we'll make it work after. And this is why animating a layered method for stuff like this can be a little bit nicer. Simply because instead of trying to get every pose just right and then finding out, oops, all the legs are messed up, gotta redo them all, I can just animate the hips, kind of focus on the hips and the feet first, get that motion more or less where I want it to be. And then from there, I can exaggerate the bodying and make sure that works. Because if I mess up on the legs, then I've got to redo everything. Am I finishing this run anim today? Probably not. I don't think I'm going to have time. Because I'm actually a little over time right now. So, yeah, I'm probably going to have to call it. I want to do at least this step here, this first step, and then we'll continue it. I don't know if it'll be the next stream. But the next animation stream. So the next stream on Saturday, tomorrow, is, if everything goes well and doesn't explode, tomorrow is going to be a co-stream again with Cameron. So we're probably going to be just finishing up the testing of our setup, because we were having issues on the last stream when we did the co-stream. We want to make sure that the setup works so that we can start doing some new types of stream content with the two of us. So animation challenges, some drawing challenges, because Cameron can draw and I can't really draw as well. So we thought it would be interesting to see, like, what would happen if I tried to draw in his style, or I don't know, like just have a draw off where we try to create something and see what we can create. Let's see, I want to raise the hips up here. Let's not worry too much about it. Essentially what I'm going to do is think of the hips as a bouncing ball once I get to that point here. But I need the other step in order to do that. But we're getting the legs in there. So starting to get that motion. I feel like it's a little linear right here. I feel like this can kind of be pushed further. I still want this line, this angle backwards, and bring that knee down a little bit, because it's going to help add to the speed of the character. The moment that you get this pose here is going to kill the speed and makes him feel like he's tiptoeing into the next pose versus running and like about to slam his foot down. Yeah, so that's actually a good point. So for anyone who's using this, if the rig is acting slowly for you, there is a cool proxy mode right here. So proxy, for anyone who doesn't know, is essentially a low res version. And I always love it when rigs have this built in. So you can see very low res, but it's all you need. You can get your silhouette and your main poses right in there. It's really nice. So since I'm getting some really good speed on this, I'm just going to keep animating it this way. That way we see the full silhouette. But I did notice that there was some slowdown in Maya 2020. That could just be my setup for some reason was causing issues. So if you do notice, maybe you're in Maya 2020 and you're getting not the best speed with the rig, try turning on the proxy mode, at least for your initial blocking. It can help speed things up quite a bit. I don't really know why I'm posing the arm out here. And Woodland Yeti, I see that glare. I do admit that I'm usually a little too hard on my own drawing skills. I can draw enough to do what I need. That's the main thing. That's the important thing to me. Okay. So right now I'm just looking at the legs. I just recognized the song. I love Pokemon. Okay. Now, as all of this is happening, I do need to watch the front view as well. So watch the character from the front. Make sure the legs are making sense. Okay. So, I'm technically over time here, but I wonder how quickly I can get the other poses in. Let's see. Let me save this. That's going to be a smart thing to do. And I'm going to see if Animbot is installed still. No. I know it is technically installed, it's just not showing up. I think, let's see, if Animbot isn't showing up, I believe, let me find my settings here. You just need to run a plugin, or not a plugin, a MyScript. Actually, do I have it in the history? No. Animbot. So I just need to run this Python script right here, and hopefully that'll get it installed. Oh, have I worked with much motion capture animations? Not too much, honestly. I've played around with it, but to actually work on motion capture, I have not. So here's the mirror tool right here. And actually, I think I'm going to have to open up the licensing here. And let's see. Hey. Okay. So let's take this pose. So on pose 3, this is going to be copied over to frame 11. And let's see if it'll mirror it. Okay. Ooh, it'll be done across the board. Interesting. Actually, it did it. Yay, I think. Yay. It's not perfect. Something's off. Yeah, it's the translation of this foot here. The X. But that's fine because I don't want a perfect copy anyway. So this kind of forces me to change things. But at least I got the majority of everything in place. So let's take that. Frame 5 to frame 13. Let's mirror it. Yeah. So this is where you want to do that frame snapshot first, which you need that default rig, which I could do if I just opened a new version, a new instance of Maya, and then not right now. Had to read that message there. And then just referenced in the rig, but I don't quite have enough time to do that. So I'm doing it the rough way. Okay, and then set that and mirror it, and we'll get that error again. There we go. Okay, let's turn that on because it keeps asking me. Okay, I think something went wrong. What went wrong? And then mirror it. It looked like it copied the wrong pose to the wrong spot. Okay. Right foot touch the ground. Okay, yeah, it's not flipping the pose, that's why. Let's just get rid of those poses then. I don't want them messing me up. Let's see, how quickly can I get this to work? Because I do want it to get this cycle done. I'm so close. I'm just like 2 poses away. And then I can refine the cycle in the next ones. I'm not the only one copying it to the wrong frame. I do it all the time. I copy from the wrong frame, and then you kind of scrub through and it's like, wait, no, something's wrong here. It's an endless cycle. Okay. So this is where one of the new features of Maya comes in that I really like, bookmarks. So I know that 11, 13, and 15 right here, this whole range needs to be flipped. So just to kind of mark it and to keep track of it, I can just create a bookmark. It's this button right here. And I'm just going to color it blue and hit create. And now I have this little bit of a marker right there that just kind of reminds me that, yeah, all of these poses are going to be flipped from these ones here. And I can even just mark out my most important poses. So let's say my key poses, let's put those as green. So frame 1, frame 9. And then frame 17. And there we go. So it just kind of keeps track of things and makes it a little easier to make sure that things aren't getting all weird. Okay. Let's open up Animbot here. Let's reference in the rig. Too many rigs. Okay. So once this is open, what we'll be able to do is run the pose snapshot, and then we should be able to go back into the other instance of Maya, and it should work. And walk. Thanks for the reminder. Okay. Wait for it to reference in. Ooh, we're getting a lot of Pokemon music. I like it. Okay. So, I've got to remember, do I need to select everything? Yeah, please select something. So, need to turn off locators and joints. Select all the controls and make sure I don't have the geometry selected. There we go. Pose snapshot. It's right behind my camera. It's the furthest button on the right side there. Is this a default pose? Yes, it is. Are you sure this is a default pose? Yes. Okay. Goes analyzing, building the mirror universe. Okay. Let's go back in here and see if it'll work now. If I go to frame 5, copy that over to frame 13. Copied now. And then I take this and I hit the mirror button. Dang it. Let's see. I guess it might just not work on this rig. Let's just try a few controls. Not the whole thing. Whoa. Now there is another way. Yeah. I could try it, but honestly, this is the big thing with this kind of tool is it can work very well and speed up your workflow. But if you notice, how much time have I spent? I think I spent about 20 minutes all told. No, a little less, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just trying to get this to work. Whereas I could have just posed things out. Just take this foot, put it down. There you go. It's the one negative of tools is sometimes they're not going to work. And that can really suck because it wastes time. And I just realized I've got some roll on that foot. That should not be. So always be cautious with tools. Ideally, they should be there to save you time, but sometimes they won't be. And if you actually look, it actually ruined one of my poses. It actually deleted one of my poses. It flipped this one. So can I undo far enough? Save my pose. Unlimited undos in Maya is wonderful. So we'll make the rest of the cycle on the next stream, because unfortunately I do have to get going right away. Let's see. There we go. I don't know why it deleted that one pose. Okay, get rid of those. Double check. The arms, they are terrible. But we'll finish the arms later.